I also, however, want to expand upon our understanding of addiction by presenting a different kind of perspective. So yes, I've given you a definition of what addiction is, this behavior that we continue to do despite the fact that it brings a negative consequence into your life. So that's a definition really of an addictive behavior. That's what that is. But at a deeper level, what is addiction itself? Like if you were to ask a doctor, what is cancer? They could describe cancer as a kind of a cell with certain kinds of behaviors. Or if you were to ask a doctor what a certain infection was, they might describe the bacteria to you and how that bacteria behaves and does detrimental things to the human body. So what is addiction? How can we look at it in a way that helps us to understand its characteristics? What does it do to us? How is it? What's its personality like? So let's go ahead and we'll personify addiction, or we'll look at it as an entity. Addiction hits the human being at each level of human experience. So we experience the world physically in this body. We experience the world mentally through the mind. And we experience the world spiritually through a spiritual apparatus that is difficult to define. But we do experience the world in these different ways. And addiction, the entity addiction, attacks us at each level. Very important thing to understand, because in our treatment of addiction, we often will treat addiction at the physical level. We'll sometimes treat it at the psychological level. Or maybe we'll have a spiritual approach to treating addiction. But very rarely do we have an approach, a comprehensive, holistic approach to addiction that treats it at every level. So we want to treat ourselves at the level of mind. We want to treat ourselves at the level of body. And we want to treat ourselves at the level of spirit. And if we approach recovery from addiction in that comprehensive way, we will find greatly improved outcomes to what we're currently looking at in the world today. Addiction is like an energetic force field. It has a vibration all its own, and I call that vibration the frequency of addiction. I believe it's an actual frequency, and when a human being carries that frequency of addiction, when they're in the frequency of addiction, I believe that it draws addictive circumstances, addictive people, addictive thinking towards us. It's kind of like an attunement, only we're not attuned to the right note. We're out of tune. And being out of tune, we have found ourselves in this frequency of addiction. Many people can understand what I'm describing when they put down their first primary addiction. So for example, for me, it was drugs and alcohol. So I put down drugs and alcohol for a long enough period of time where I started to heal to a great extent. But there was this interesting phenomena going on. In my behavior, in my orientation to the world, I still found myself searching, seeking, looking for comfort in addictive behaviors. No, it wasn't drugs and alcohol. Now it was things like sex, cigarettes, relationships, gambling. So all these other ways that a human being could get caught in an addictive web, I went from the drugs and alcohol, I went into these things. And we find many people go into food or any of the other arenas of the big six of addictions, right? So if you can relate to that idea, or maybe you're a loved one of someone who suffered and you saw them go from drug addiction to food addiction, and you were like, my God, they just go from one addiction to the next. Well, my theory is that they're still in that frequency of addiction. They've no question that they've improved from drug addiction and alcoholism had taken a toll. They've moved forward from there, but nonetheless, they're still in this frequency of addiction. And so this begs the question, how does somebody get out of the frequency of addiction? How do we attune ourselves appropriately to the frequency of recovery, healing, love, connection? That's the frequency we want to be on. How do we turn the dial, if you will, and get ourselves aligned in the right way? Well, you probably already know many answers to that question, but let's call them out. You can take a walk in nature. You can sit down and you can do some meditation, some breath work, some yoga. You can go and get a really healthy smoothie or green juice that's low in sugar that will bring high density nutrition into the body. You can listen to uplifting spiritual media that connects you to your heart. You can listen to music that makes you feel a part of. You can engage in the world of art, which helps you to see differently and to build and experience the world through new perspectives. You can be of service to another human being. You can do so many things as a human being that will bring you back into alignment. But when you go through the day, stuck in your own mind, answering the moment-to-moment cravings of the physical body, then we're really in this out of alignment place. Actions lead to trouble. Words and deeds are in a disharmonious place. When we come into alignment, then we're finally able to be on purpose and on mission and to feel like there's a place for us here and to be contributing to life in a way that's fulfilling to us and to others around us. So there are many, many ways to get out of the frequency of addiction. Thank God. And the most important thing is to recognize in yourself, you may be 30 days sober, you may be 30 years sober. If you're still acting out in those kinds of ways where you feel like, okay, this is addictive, I feel that sticky, rough place and I don't want to be in this place anymore, I want to move beyond this. Well, you have really come to the right place, because Recovery 2.0 is created as a university to move beyond the frequency of addiction and to get us all involved in the behaviors and the actions and the rituals and the beautiful points of connection that are going to carry us forward into a place of alignment beyond the frequency of addiction. So you see, that's the personality of this entity known as addiction. It's looking for you. If you have shame, if you have negativity, if you have a fractured consciousness, if you are out of alignment with your own values, addiction is hoping to find you. You are a welcome host. Here, the idea is to make yourself into an unwelcome host for addiction. And we do that by doing our sadhana practice, by engaging in other yoga and meditation practices, by beginning to consciously look at our relationships, look at our relationship with food, money, and of course people, and just being on the path, this unfolding path, is all that's required. We just don't leave this path. Will we make mistakes? Of course. Will we stray momentarily? Of course. The main thing is not to say to yourself, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to pay attention, I'm not going to look. That is very attractive to the entity known as addiction. But the minute you say, I need help, I need community, I want to access teachings, I want to access teachers, I want to be conscious in the way I live life, you are now making yourself into an unwelcome host for this thing called addiction. So as you go out into the world and as you experience yourself as a person on this spectrum of moving from the darkness of addiction into the light of recovery, consider the things that I'm suggesting here and Let's really understand what addiction is as a definition, but also how it is as an entity, how it behaves, what are its characteristics, what are its idiosyncrasies. The more we understand, the more we can make ourselves into somebody that would absolutely not be a foothold for this thing called addiction.